Got it. Good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on when and where you're watching this webinar from. My name is Jimmy Lea. I am with the Institute for Automotive Business Excellence. Super excited to be here with you today as we're going to discuss the 5 steps to improving profit. I'm so excited to be here with you to talk about these things. This is going to be awesome and amazing. I'll be the host. I'll be the voice for you. So if you've got questions, we've got the answers. We're going to let you go first because today my guest is Cecil Bullard. Cecil is the CEO and founder of the Institute for Automotive Business Excellence. Thank you, Cecil, for being here.
Thanks for having me here, buddy.
Yeah, I'm super excited because this information is what every shop all across the country needs. Every shop needs to see this because it's some simple, small, little tweaks that they can make that make all the difference. So it's super awesome. I'm super excited to be here with you, Cecil, to have this discussion. So with that, let's get dug into what are the 5 steps to improve profit for shops all across the country starting today.
Hey, Jimmy, I'm going to go ahead and get going here, but I added a little something because I think it's really important for us to understand kind of the financial balance of the shop. And if we understand the financial balance, we also understand that most of the problems come between what we charge for parts and what we charge for labor. And so I'm going to just kind of go through that. So if I'm charging $120 an hour effectively, meaning, I might have a posted rate of 135, but I'm getting 120, which we're going to talk about effective labor rate in a minute. And I have 3 technicians in my shop and they're 100% productive. And my parts to labor ratio, so 55% of what I'm selling is labor and 45% is parts, which is the right balance if my shop's running perfectly and I'm following a parts matrix kind of religiously. In other words, I put this parts matrix pricing scheme into my computer system, and then I don't touch it. I don't change it. I don't let my service advisor lower the cost, etc. Then I'm going to get 1.24 million in business that my technicians are going to actually do in my shop. And so now we're going to talk about how much of that would be parts. What would it cost me in parts? If I did 1.24 million, I want 18% of my cost to be parts. So roughly, whatever is that? Roughly 188,000 or so would be parts. Maybe it's 196. Math is not working, but I want the way I do this. Let's even it. Let's say I did $1 million in business. I have 180,000 to pay for parts. I don't, call Napa or Worldpac or whoever I'm using for parts and say, here's what I'm going to pay you. I actually have a matrix that I put in place, and when I have that matrix in place, that matrix sets the price for me, right? And that would mean that I would pay out after $1 million in business, 180,000, which would give me a parts margin of about 58%. So that gives me a decent parts margin. That's what we're shooting for in our shop. And then because my technicians are 100% productive, then whatever my labor rate is I'm getting, then I'm going to balance my margins to 64% on labor. And that's a loaded cost, meaning once I pay for the tech, say $30 an hour plus FICA, FUTA, workers' comp, vacation days, etc., I'm actually paying 20% of my sales out. Again, if I was $1 million, it would be, 200,000 to my tax. In this case, 20% would put us at $248,000 for tax. It could be 3 tax, and that would give me a 64% margin. The difference between what I paid for the labor and what I got for the labor would be 64%, which would give me a cost of goods of 38%. And this is really what I'm tracking for, because it leaves 62% in gross profit to pay the rest of the expenses. So like if I took $1 and I bought parts, I'd take 18 cents and I'd pay for the parts. And if I bought labor, I'd take 20 cents, I'd pay for the tax. And then that would leave me 62 cents out of every dollar to pay for the rest, my fixed expenses. And if you're working with us, the Institute, We're going to divide that into about 12 categories, but for training purposes, we're only going to do 3. Sales. I got to pay somebody to sell this work for my 3 technicians. So loaded somewhere between 8 and 10% of sales. Again, 1.24 million. I have 124,000 to pay a service advisor. Excuse me. I hate that. Every time I get on the mic, I got to choke up a little bit. Then
Such an emotional subject for that we're discussing
it's
here.
Gonna make me cry. It is emotional because, there's too many shops that aren't doing it right. And so they work really hard. I was just on a podcast the other day where we had a guy who owned a shop. They did $1 million in business and there's no profit left. Well, how can you do $1 million and not make any real profit? And that's because you don't get this right. So sales expense 8 to 10%. Marketing. If I'm a modern shop today, I need to have marketing because the modern buyer, the millennial, the Z-Gen, they don't go necessarily by what dad says. Hey, I know Bob over at Bob's Automotive. He's a nice guy. They look online for a shop, and I've got to be there in order for this guy to see me or this gal to see me and come in my shop. So I'm going to spend between 6 and 9% of sales. So somewhere between 72,000 and 100,000 in this particular shop on marketing and marketing alone. And this is a marketing discussion would be for another meeting. And that leaves me 25%. So you remember I had 62 cents and then I paid out, 10 to the sales guy and I paid out, say, 8 to the marketing guy or gal. And then I have my fixed expenses, which would be rent, utilities, banking costs, the truck, the gas, the insurance, fixing the roof, buying new tools, all of that would be in my fixed expenses. And by the way, as the owner of the company, I get paid in 2 ways. One is as a salary for what I do in the company. Think of if I had to replace the jobs that I did, what would that person, I'd have to pay whoever it is. So if I had a manager, would I have to pay a manager $100,000 to manage $1.2 million shop? Or if I had a service advisor, what am I paying that? 80,000, maybe 100,000. What about, the financial person? Maybe I'm the financial person too. How do I replace myself? That salary that I get for doing a job in the company, just like a tech or a service advisor or a manager, comes to me in the form of fixed expenses. That's where it's accounted for. Now I get paid in a second way, and that's net profit. At the end of the day, if I do it right and I charge enough and I don't overspend, I leave about 20 cents in the bottom line. Okay. Meaning when I'm done and everything's paid for except for Uncle Sam and whoever my uncle or aunt is running my state, so state and federal taxes, I have 20 cents out of every dollar left in the pile. So $1 million shop ought to have 200,000 in net profit. Then we pay taxes, then we reinvest in our company, and I end up taking another $70,000 or $80,000 home because my company got me 20% net profit. Now, I love this part because we really need to understand where our businesses are kind of going south, right? And so here's a shop that has 4 techs doing 1.24 million. So they're not as productive as they need to be. They're actually at about, if it's 4 techs, they're at 75% productivity. Industry average is 72%, or it was last time I saw a stat. And they also don't follow a parts matrix. So on the right, you see the shop. This is the good shop, right? This is the shop that runs it right, prices properly, gets what they need, and has, money left at the end of the day. On this side, on the left, we're going to put the shop that doesn't follow a parts matrix. And so if you don't follow a parts matrix, you get emotional. Oh, that part's a little expensive. Oh, man, that's like $3,000 on that guy's car. He's never going to spend $3,000. What if I brought it down to $2,800? That'll make it he'll swallow it better, right? And so now my margin drops because I'm not charging that extra $200, and that's profit I lose. And I'm spending 26 cents out of every dollar on parts. because I'm not charging enough for those parts. Okay. And it's mostly emotional attachment, right? It's mostly whoever's selling is emotionally attached to the price because they kind of think, well, God, if I had to pay, $1,000 for that part, I would be like, oh my gosh. So what if I make it 800, or what if I make it, 850? That's easier for the customer to swallow. Now, parts again is simple. I put a matrix in, I follow it. I'm not emotional about it. I need to charge what I need to charge. Labor is much more difficult because productivity comes into play. And if you remember on the left here, we have a shop that's not as productive. I have to have 4 techs. And so I have to have, extra parking. I have to have extra computers. I have to have extra tools, another bay, another rack. I have more expenses. And when I have 3 techs, I might be able to have 1 service advisor. But when I have 4 techs, I can't. I have to have another service advisor. So a lot of things go up because I add that 4th body. And if we're not producing what 4 techs should do in this shop, it should be probably somewhere close to 1.7. And we're only doing 1.24, then my labor cost is going to go up because I'm paying 4 guys to do the job instead of 3. So actually, if I had only 3 guys and they were doing the job, I could take some of the 4th guy's pay and pay my techs more, and some of the 4th guy's pay and put it in the bottom line. I'd make more money. And so what everyone should understand about their business is we have made we've lost 13% of our profit already. So instead of having a cost at 38 cents on the dollar, we now have a cost of 51 cents on the dollar. So we've lost 13 cents out of every dollar above the line where we haven't, because we didn't price ourselves, we didn't hold the line, we didn't build productivity into our business. Okay. Which gives us a gross profit of 49%. Now we still have sales costs, but you remember I said we have to add another service advisor because 4 guys, 1 service advisor is unlikely to handle 4 guys properly. And so now my cost goes up, and then my marketing cost actually goes down, which is miraculous. You would think, oh, I need more customers, so my marketing cost should probably go up, but it doesn't because I don't have any profit. So now I start to cut places like owner pay and marketing. And so my marketing cost goes down. My fixed expenses, you remember I had to hire that other guy. Every time I hire somebody at the Institute, I forget about the $5,000 or $6,000 I'm going to spend on computers and phones and with my tech guy to make sure that all the tech is set up properly, blah, blah, blah. So my fixed expenses are actually going to go up to about 32%. We see this all the time. In fact, I see fixed expenses as high as 42% in shops because not because the expenses are too high, but because they're not doing enough business to balance it out. And that leaves me a 3% net profit. Now, I would tell you, based on statistical data that I have researched, the last good data we probably had was in last year, that the average shop is making about a 4% net profit. So they're doing a little better than what I have in this particular graph. Now I'm going to talk about 5 ways that if I identify this and I make 5 really small changes in my business, that it could put, well over 100 grand in my bottom line. And I would tell you the average shop that's doing somewhere around $1 million is probably losing about $140,000 to $150,000 because they're not doing these things correctly. Okay.
Question for you before you get into that.
Go ahead.
Because so if we're looking at a shop and as a shop owner, I'm looking at your example and I'm really relating to this going, wow, everything he's talking about on the bad side, this is reflective of my shop. I'm doing $1 million and I have no profit at the end. I'm coming out with 3%. Where do we work first? Where should my focus be first? Am I looking at profit first, or how do I bring my shop into balance so that it is ready for raising the rates and other things like that?
So the first thing that you should do is probably work on parts margin, because parts margin is the easiest thing to fix. And so if you look at your parts margin and you say, so if we go back and we say, well, my parts margin ought to be 58%, but I'm only 35. Okay. And let's say that only the best shop owners the most aggressive, et cetera, people, the D personalities are going to get 58%, and the average guy is not going to get 58%. Let's say he's going to get 55, right? So if I'm at say 42, and I'm doing $1 million, and half of that is parts, if I raise that from 42 to 55, that's 13% of $1 million. 13%, excuse me, 500,000. It's about 70,000 bucks. That's additional profit just by fixing my parts matrix. That's it, right? And so where do I start? First of all, understand where your numbers really are. Are you on the right side or the left side? And if you're on the left side, wow, the good news is we have the ability now to make a real difference in our bottom line, right? There's some things we can do. Now, by the way, if you're losing money and you're on the right side, now what do I do, right? This would be that my fixed expenses were just way too high. And we do see that. We see some shops that are well overstaffed for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so their fixed expenses are higher than they ought to be. But we almost never start there. We almost always start with parts margin. And then labor rate would be the second place or the first, because like if you just take a small labor rate increase, let's say you're a shop, let's say you're doing, I don't know, 300 hours a month. I think we have we'll go through it, but let's say you're doing 300 hours a month and you have a $5 increase in labor. What customer, that's doing say 1.2 hours, I think that's the average today, about 1.2, maybe it's 1.4. Let's say it's 1.5 is the average sale. And we have a $5 labor rate increase. That's $7.50 to the typical customer. What customer today would go, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna, it's another $7.50. I'm going somewhere else. Who's cheaper?
Yeah, that's a nuisance fee. It's not even recognizable. You don't even see it. You're like, okay.
I used to go to McDonald's. It's on the way here. So a couple times a week, I'll stop and get a McMuffin or whatever in the morning. And their package was $3.51. That was a McMuffin, whatever the hash brown and a soda, right? And it was $3.51. And I know that number because it was $3.51 for 3, 4, 5 years. And then all of a sudden 2020 hit. I was at McDonald's yesterday. I didn't go today. But yesterday I got the exact same thing. It was $6.64 or something. Okay. So McDonald's went up, what is that? Almost double, right?
Sure.
Like 100%. And I'm worried about a $5 labor increase. That's $7.50 to the average ticket in my shop. And by the way, if I had a $5 increase on 300 hours, that's $1,500 in additional profit. It should drop right to my gross profit no matter what I do. And so the easiest thing is raise your labor rate. And I know that there are going to be people out there that are going to go, oh, those darn consultants, all they say is raise your labor rate, raise your labor rate, raise your labor rate. But the fact is that the industry is well below where they should be, which we'll go through in some other slides. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do in my shop is do a small labor rate increase. Okay. So step one, raise your rate. And if you raised your rate 6 months ago, well, according to our government, our inflation right now is a little over 5%, close to 6%. I need at least a 6% increase in my labor rate. And if I'm over $100, that's $6 an hour, according to our government. Now, according to some other people that I trust more than our government, the actual inflation is about 20%. So now I need a $20 increase just to keep up with inflation. That's not to make more money. That's only to keep
maintain
up with inflation. So what if we compared ourselves to other trades? There's an interesting article recently that said the automotive service and repair industry charges 28% less per hour than other blue collar industry. So my plumber, who needs to know two things, right? Crap flows downhill, and don't chew your fingernails. He gets 28% more than a typical shop. My electrician gets 28% more. Why? They have less equipment. They need less knowledge. I mean, I understand electricity, and I wired a lot of the stuff here at the Institute. during 2020 and 2021 because we couldn't get people in to do it. So I did it, and it works great. And I didn't need a lot of tools. I didn't need a rack. I didn't need, a Snap-on toolbox with $100,000 worth of tools in it and 3 scanners. All I did was, I had a wire stripper and a tester to test and make sure the electricity was off. And then I wired it up, and a screwdriver, and that was the tools I needed to do that particular ladder and a drill. But if we really are 28% less than other blue collar industries, why? We have more expenses. All right. So what happens if we increase the average rate starting in 1980 to 2022? Actually, today is 2023. This was written last year, by 3%. So I took a shop in 1980 that was at $70 an hour. By the way, guess whose shop that was?
Yours.
That was mine.
Yeah.
And I raised the rate by 3% every year to keep up with the average cost of inflation. Okay. And that made my shop in 2022 worth $230 an hour. Now, by the way, if I had another 3% increase, I'm going to do that right here. I can't do that one in my mind. That's another $6.90, almost $7 an hour. So now we're at $236.90 in 2023. And next year I'll have a $7 increase at 3%, and I'll be, well above that. So we're not at the rate we should be as an industry. And yeah, I know the guy down the street is still charging $60 an hour, but he also doesn't have insurance, and he doesn't do a great job, and he doesn't use the right parts. And if a job's too complicated, he can't fix it. He doesn't give the customer service that I do. If we do a great job, shouldn't we get paid for it? Right? So I'm just going to raise my rate by $10, and I'm actually going to assume that I'm going to chase away some customers. I do a $10 increase. And I'm going to chase away a few of my, what I call bottom feeders. None of my good customers are going to leave for $10. Again, $15 a ticket. Someone that will say yes at $800 will say yes at $850. Someone that will argue at $850 will argue at $800. It doesn't mean much. And I can tell you over 23 years as a consultant in talking about raising your labor rates, I've never had anyone come back from a class and say, I raised my labor rate by $10 and I lost a bunch of my customers. I've always had people come back and go, I raised my labor rate by $10 and nobody noticed. When your labor rate's high enough, Jimmy, it's when you chase away 5% of the customers at the bottom. They actually come in your shop, 5 out of 100, and they go, I can't afford this place anymore. They go somewhere else. That's when your rate's high enough.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
that's a great scenario.
All right, so I'm going to raise my labor rate $10 an hour. If I'm an average shop at 72% productivity with 3 techs, I'm going to bill out 362.9 hours in a month. That's a 5-day shop. I'm open 5 days a week. That's how many hours I'm going to bill out. If I raise my labor rate by $10 an hour, I'm going to bring in another $3,629 in additional income per month, which equals $43,546 per year. Now, by the way, I'm already paying my rent. I'm already paying my utilities. There's just no money on my bottom line. If I'm a 3-person shop, 3 techs at 72% productivity, and I do $10 increase, I will put another $43,000 on my bottom line. The power of a small increase in rate is unbelievable when it adds up for the year. So let's say we lost 20 customers. These are in our bottom 5%. We actually had 20 people who said, I'm not coming in. Now the average, let's say we have those customers have a $500 average repair order. And by the way, your bottom customers will have a lower average repair order than your normal. And let's say they visit 1.2 times a year, because that's the average visits that a shop gets from nationally from their customer, 1.2 times a year. Then I would still come out over $31,500 in the plus by losing 20 customers. So I could probably, frankly, lose 200 customers. I'd still have more money in the bank and more profit in my company because of a $10 labor rate increase. So if you're not making enough money, go home and raise your labor rate $10 an hour. Easiest thing to do. It will put more money in the bottom line. It's very simple. And by the way, if you don't feel you can do $10 an hour, then do 8. If you don't feel you can do 8, do 5. And then I would tell you, I give you my advice I give all my clients. If you think you can do 5, do 8. Nobody will notice. Nobody cares.
I have a real good friend. If I can tell you a quick story,
ahead.
Pensacola, Florida. He came to me and says, "Oh, I've got this problem. I'm scheduled out 2-3 months." I said, "Dude, you don't have a scheduling problem. You got a pricing problem. Increase it $10. He totally freaked out, but he did it. And after 30 days, we came back together to talk. And I said, "Hey, what's the result?" And he said, "Nobody noticed.
I'm still scheduled out 3 months."
And he's still scheduled out 3 months.
Yeah.
Raise it another $10.
Yeah.
So he did. Nobody said boo about it. I came back to him 60 days later. So now it's 3 months after the first conversation. Still booked out 2 to 3 months. And he raised it another $10. So now we're $30 more. And it's 90 days. It's 3 months since our first conversation. $30 more per hour. He raised it again to another $10. I want to say nobody said anything, but he lost 3 customers.
So at $40 an hour, he lost 3. And by the way, the 3 he lost,
he said,
they're the guys that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up when they come in. You're like, I don't really want to work for this guy.
Yes.
So I'm okay with that. I mean, and I think we can't afford to lose a customer. And the fact is, you're probably not. You probably have to have a $40 or $50 increase to actually start losing customers. A $10 increase, you're not going to lose anybody, period. No. They won't notice. So I'm doing a seminar in Salt Lake City. And about 4 months after the seminar, 5 months, I get a call from somebody. My phone rings. I pick it up. "Hey, Cecil. Hey, how you doing? Hey, this is so-and-so. I was in your class in Salt Lake City." "Oh, yeah." Can't remember the guy, frankly, because I've had 25 classes since then, right?
Right.
And he goes, "Oh, you changed my life. I just wanted to thank you. You really made a difference in my business." I'm like, "Oh, really? Great. What did I do?" Right? What did I tell you? He says, "Well, I went home and I raised my labor rate." I said, "Okay, that's great. How much?" He says, "I went up $55 an hour." I was like, "Excuse me?" Right? And at the time, the average labor rate in Salt Lake was probably a little over $100, maybe 105, 107. He was at $50 an hour, and he raised his labor rate to a little over 100. And so he didn't lose any customers because he actually was literally still kind of under the average rate. He just didn't lose people. And if somebody told me raise your labor rate, I'm like, okay, maybe I go 20 and I'm going to choke on it, right? I'll go 20. God, oh me, let's see what happens. And nobody notices. But this guy went up over $50 an hour.
He doubled his labor
rate, and he didn't lose anybody. In fairness, it's possible that he lost 1 or 2 that he doesn't know about. But okay, so what? I mean, this is a guy now. All of a sudden, he's earning a living. So raising your rate is like the easiest thing. And
step one.
Yeah, I mean, step one. And if you are a 3-tech shop at 72% productivity, it's another $43,000 a year in your bottom line. So step 2, oh no, what could I do with that additional income? What could you do with 43,000? Oh, I could pay my staff more. I could buy better equipment. I could fix the roof in my shop. I could
paint the outside,
that money home and make mommy happy, whatever, right? I mean, I could spend it on marketing and find better customers. I could change my business. There's so much that I could do with that. All right. Step number 2, parts. Parts simple. Use a matrix. Follow the matrix. Check your matrix. If you're not getting 55% at least out of your parts margin and you are religiously following a matrix, you have one of 2 problems. One, your matrix isn't working properly. And what that means is the second problem is that your average part is more expensive than maybe someone else's that the matrix was set up for. So back in the day, I don't know, God, I say that too much nowadays. Say 15 years ago, I had a matrix I was using that got us actually 62% margin in our shop because we had very high rent and I needed 62% margin to pay the bills. So I had that matrix. I brought that matrix with me when I came in the industry. Back 15 years ago, the average part cost was $27. And at $27, I was using a 60% a 2.5 multiplier, which gave me 60% profit margin on those parts, average parts. Well, today I would say the average part is, I haven't seen a stat, but I guarantee it's well over $60. So that very same matrix that I was using 15 years ago, we have made adjustments to that matrix to follow the fact that we're now selling more expensive components on cars, because I've had to adjust the matrix to hold margin. And so why do I use a matrix? I use a matrix because it is the fairest thing, because I'm not emotional. I don't want my people being emotional. It's fair to the company. 3 people have to win in auto repair. The customer has to get a really good job, great service, quality part, good warranty. The employees have to win. They have to get a safe place to work, clean, well lit, the right tools, the education. They have to get decent pay and they have to get benefits, because if we don't pay them decently, we don't give them benefits, they won't be working in the automotive industry, which we're seeing that issue now. And so they have to win. And then third, the owner has to win, the business, and the business needs to win by making a profit. So let's say that I am emotional. And so I have one customer beat me up on parts and I'm emotional about it. So I lower the price for that guy. The next guy that comes in doesn't say anything. I'm not emotional and he pays the full price. Is that fair? Right? The fairest way to bill out your parts is to use a matrix and to make sure that matrix covers all 3. I can buy a good part. I can take good care of my customer, and the company can make profits so that I can pay my employees and myself well. That's a matrix. And so if I can increase my parts margin by just 5%. Now, by the way, I would tell you the average parts margin in the industry is probably 44%, 45%, with the top shops getting 55, 58, even 59. I have some shops that get 60 because they need to. But I would say the average is probably somewhere around 44%. So I'm going to move it up by 5%. That's a very small increase in the different areas of my matrix, small increase. Or maybe it's just holding the line instead of mostly discounting. But that would give me an additional, in that very same shop with 3 techs, that give me an additional $1,450 in parts profit every month, or about $17,000 annually. So if I combine a small rate increase and my parts margin holding the line and getting another 5%, I now have an extra $61,000 in profit in my company. And then, okay, what can I do with that? Right? 61,000. Holy smokes, I could breathe. I could go home at night and see my kids. I could take my family somewhere for vacation. Oh my gosh, I don't have to stay home and not spend any money. I could take my family out to eat once a month. Who knows, right? We're supposed to have a life. So following a matrix could increase my profit considerably. And to me, it's the easiest thing to do. Step 3, what about better inspections? Because really, if I raise my average repair order just a little bit by doing a little better inspection, it's going to put more money in my bottom line. So again, based on government research, and this is a number from 2019, because I haven't seen a number yet now. I would tell you the number's probably double what it is. But in 2019, according to us.gov, there was $2 billion worth of work, viable work that should have been done on the American fleet that was never done. And I was asked the question in class, did we not find it? Did we not estimate it, or did we not sell it? And the answer is yes, right? It's all 3. But what if we did a little better inspection? If we don't have a DVI, I was really, there was a stat the other day, what percentage of shops are using a digital vehicle inspection? And I thought, okay, maybe it's 20% or something like that. It's actually, if I remember right, and I'm not don't hold me to this because I can't remember, but it was something like 5 to 6%. I mean, it was literally out of 100 shops, only 5 or 6 of them have a digital vehicle inspection. So holy smokes, what if I just put a DVI? Oh, Cecil, I can't. That's $300 a month in cost. But if it moves your average repair order by $150, which is kind of the average, and you're doing 3 cars a day, 5 cars a day, I paid for that with 2 cars. Okay, let's say that I got to pay for the parts and the labor out of that. So 4 cars paid for it. And so what if we did a better inspection? With roughly 200,000 shops in the industry, the average shop could be leaving an estimated $1 million in serviceable work on the table. We didn't see it, we didn't estimate it, or the customer didn't buy it. So if I see it, if I see more and I write it up, only what the car needs. I never want you to sell something the car doesn't need. But if I take a good look and I have standards and I find what needs to be done on the car, I write everything up. How much of all the stuff? Well, what if the guy's got a $3,000 car and it's got $5,000 worth of work? Write it up. He doesn't have a lot of options. That's a guy who can't afford to go buy a new car, and buying a used car would put him in financial risk. Write it up. Okay. I'm tired of service advisors, salespeople making financial decisions for customers when they don't have any clue. Maybe you wouldn't fix that car, but maybe that person will. You know, if somebody's driving like a 30-year-old car, do you think they're driving it because they have to or because they want to? Right? And if they want to, because it was their dad's car or whatever, then they're emotionally attached. Do better inspections. Okay. If a small shop that did $500,000 in annual revenue with an average repair order of $400 and a car count of 1,250, it'd be a small shop, and they raise their average repair order by $50, just $50, because you found one more thing on every third car that came through, and you sold one of 3, right? That we would sell an additional $62,500 in service over the year, of which about 30% would drop to your bottom line. So now, about 30,000, about half. In fact, it's not quite half, because I'm supposed to be making 62% gross profit, but I'm saying, what if you made 48% gross profit? It's 30,000 in my bottom line. And so add that with the other stuff, and I haven't increased car count. I don't have to have more bays. I don't have to have more racks. I don't have to have more people. I don't have to write up more tickets. I'm just doing a better job without increasing car count. Now let's really do it. Let's put a DVI in place. Let's really do a great inspection and make sure all of my technicians know how to do a great inspection. If I raise my average repair order by $150 in that very small shop, I would sell another $187,500 in business and drop more than 90,000 into my bottom line. I mean, it's so simple. And you want to know what kills me, Jimmy? You'll have guys watch this and they won't do any of it. And then they'll, at the end of the year, they'll go, I wonder why I have no money, right? I mean, these are the 5 things that we're talking about. These are like, they're so easy to do. And you don't have to do all of them. Just pick 1 or 2 and get it done, and put another 100 grand in your bottom line. So number 4, what if I fix
hold on a second. We can't go on to number 4 yet. You got to come back to number 3, because this is a drum I was pounding for more than half a decade. Digital inspections, DVIs. I have seen shops double their average repair order. So when you started this example at $400, I have seen the shop double to $800 average repair order.
Yes.
That is life-changing.
In fact, all of our consultants, facilitators were having a meeting looking at KPIs, and we had several shops, because we're trying to set one for average repair order. So in general repair, our mean KPI would be about 750. Okay. So I really want to see a minimum of about 750 for an average repair order in a general repair shop. And then for European, I think we set it at 1,600 to 1,600. And that's also our experience with over 200 shops. Looking at the shops that do it well, that's what they're doing. So imagine that you have a $450 average repair, and you actually moved it up to 600. Yeah, that's well below 750, but that could put 90,000 in your bottom line, or should, right?
Totally.
So all right, now
so the question that they're going to ask, Cecil, is which DVI should I use, Cecil? Which DVI is going to be the best for my shop?
You know what? It drives me nuts. I just got to tell you.
Tell me.
Somebody will take 6 months to make a decision about a DVI losing $150 on each car that comes through. Okay.
Times 6 months.
All while you're going, I don't know, maybe that one, maybe that one, maybe that one. You know what DVI you should use? The one that works with your point of sale, hopefully,
Bingo.
right?
Yes.
And then one that works for you. And by the way, you could put a DVI in process, and then 4 months later, you could say, well, I don't know, I don't like this one. It's not flexible enough, or it's not this, or it's not that. And you could get a different DVI. These are the very same guys that will go out and spend $10,000 on a scanner, and they won't spend $300 a month on a DVI. Stop making every excuse for not doing it. Just get it done.
Yeah.
You know, I have clients that come to me and they say, I want to change point of sales. What should I use? I have 3 or 4 recommendations. But the fact is, most of the point of sales in the business today will do the job.
Yeah.
Right. You may like some things about this one more than you like some things about that one. But any point of sale that I would recommend will get the job done. So pick one. I had a client that's a C personality. They need all this information. They can't make a decision. They're literally stuck because they need more information. And
analysis
so I said,
paralysis.
Right. So I gave him 3 point of sales. I said, you have until Friday, 1 week. And on Friday, I'm going to call you. And on Friday, you're making a decision.
Yeah.
So on Friday, I call him up. I said, which point of sale? He says, well, gosh, Cecil, I don't know. I need more information. I said, no. Out of the 3, which one? He picked one. And by the way, he's used that ever since, and he loves it. Just pick a DVI.
Pick one and
pick
go.
One that will do the job. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe we're all afraid that, oh my God, I'm gonna waste $300. Yeah, you might, right? But you're wasting hundreds of dollars every day because you don't have it in play, right?
Yeah.
So stop vacillating and make a decision. All right, ELR, we got to get moving. Effective labor rate. This is what you actually get per hour. And a lot of people think, oh, I charge $120 an hour, so I get $120 an hour. That's not true in most shops. Mm-hmm. So effective labor rate is the average number of dollars you bring in when you charge out your labor. It should be the same as your posted rate, frankly, because if you held the line all the time, but it's not. And it's not because of comebacks and oil changes and jobs where we don't charge as much, and warranty jobs, and sometimes diagnostic time that isn't charged for. So I love it. A guy will come into a shop, talk to the service advisor. On the phone, the guy said, I got a check engine light on. So we're $150 for a diag for a check engine light. Guy comes in, it's $150. As you're talking to the guy, you say, well, is there anything else? He says, oh yeah, Cecil, driver's window doesn't roll up and down. It's stuck up. Can you check that out? Sure, no problem, right? Is there anything else? Yeah, there's a really bad noise in the rear of the car at about 35 miles an hour when you go over a bump, right? Okay, right? And then it's still the same $150, but now you have 3 diagnostics for 3 different things. It should be $450 at this point, but it never happens, or it rarely happens. I won't say never, because I know there's a lot of my clients out there and they're not letting that slide. But I see it all the time in shops. So here's a shop with $120 posted rate. Today they're going to do 8 hours of labor at $120 an hour. And then they're going to do 6 oil changes. And when they do oil changes, they charge $60 an hour, and they pay their tech 5/10 of an hour. So they're going to bring in $120 on those 6 oil changes. And then they're going to do 2 hours of warranty work, because I got a water pump that came back that was leaking. Not anybody's fault, just a faulty water pump. And then they're going to do 9 inspections on 9 of the cars, which they're not charging the customer for, but they are paying the technician time for that, right? Either by paying them an hourly rate or by paying them 5/10 per inspection or 4/10, whatever it is. So they actually brought in $1,080, and they billed out or credited to their technicians 17.5 hours. Oops. When we take the money, you take the hours, the dollars, you divide it by the hours. This shop made $61.71 an hour on average on this day. So you might think you're charging $120, but you're actually charging a lot less because of some of these other things that come into play. And for most shops, they don't know what their effective labor rate is at all. And so how can you even price yourself or know what you should be paying if you don't know what you're actually charging, what you're getting? So this is something that you should look at. So we're going to make a few minor changes. We're going to get rid of our oil change. We're going to go to a minor service or some kind of K service or Uncle Bill's special service. Believe it or not, I had a shop. He changed from an oil change to, I think it was Bill's super service or something like that. I don't know what it was, but he actually raised the rate on it, and he raised the time on it a little bit. So he was able to bring in $90 instead of 60. Okay. Then we're going to charge 0.8 for that because we're going to include the DVI inspection as part of that, a nice report for the customer. And then we provided that comprehensive inspection for the customer, which increased our average repair order. And also because we did a better inspection, we actually decreased our warranty work, because a lot of warranty is something we don't catch or see. And then the customer leaves our shop and has a problem. They come back and they think it's our fault, and we discount whatever it is because we don't want to have the argument, frankly. Not my fault. And by the way, it is my fault, because if I was doing a good inspection, I should have seen it. So we're going to do those things, right? Just those. And so if we made these changes, it might look like this. So we did 10 hours of labor at $120 because we're getting more at 120. We did 6 services at $90 an hour at 0.8 of an hour, brought in $432. We only did 1 hour of warranty work instead of 2. And because we were in these services, we were actually paying the tech for the inspection. I didn't do any inspections at no charge. Okay. So now I brought in $1,632 and I billed out 15.8 hours. And so now I have an effective labor rate of 103.29. So I went from 61 and change to over 103. That's a $42 difference per hour on a total of 15 hours. Okay. So I brought in another $656.96 in comparative income for that day. Sorry. Want you to see that. So at $41.58 per hour at 15.8 hours, that's another $656.96, almost $657 in income for that day. And I don't have anything. I'm not using that to pay for parts or labor. That's additional profit income that goes into my gross profit that could fall to my bottom line. So, so that one is going to get me $656.96 a day. I don't know why I don't have the total if I did that for 250 days. Let's do 657 times 250. That would bring in another $164,000 in labor profit, period. Okay.
That's a nice number.
And now I'm going to improve my workflow so I get more productivity, because productivity becomes an issue. So I'm going to, where does workflow slow down? Workflow usually slows down because the service advisor doesn't have the right information. I would tell you probably 5 out of 10, the service advisor doesn't get the right information, and the service advisor has to leave the counter, go back to talk to the tech to get more information, then go in and estimate the job. So you have service advisor time wasted and you have tech time wasted. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to create a system or a process where the technician tells the service advisor exactly what the customer needs, puts it in the right order, then why in as short a narrative as possible. Don't write me 2 paragraphs if you can write 1. Don't write me 1 paragraph if you can write 1 sentence, and don't write me a whole sentence if you can do it in 5 words. Okay. 0% brakes, 0%. I know what that means. You don't have to say, I pulled the wheels off and we checked the brake pads and we measured them and the brakes are this and this is that. You just tell me 0%. I know what I'm selling. And then how much time does a technician, the person who's looking at the car, believe it will take based on book time plus a multiplier? And then our exceptions. What are the exceptions, right? If it's extremely rusted, I want more time. If the bolts are all rounded off, if it's back in the day, working on a Jeep, the straight 6, if I'm working on a manifold, exhaust manifold, I know at least 1 bolt, if not 2, is going to break. I want more time than the book is telling me, right? So based on the technician's experience with these types of cars, et cetera, what's the time? And then I need a comprehensive list of parts from the tech. I don't know what you need. And so if I don't get a comprehensive list as a service advisor, I don't get everything here. And tomorrow, when all the parts show up, you start working on the car and you realize there's 3 things that you need that I don't have because I didn't know, because you didn't tell me. If we could do that and increase productivity out of the shop, something simple, but not being clear on one of these things takes up advisor's time and technician time, which equals productivity. So if I have an effective labor rate of 103.29 and a parts labor ratio of 45 to 55% labor, then my hours worth 187.99. So if I could actually get 1.5 hours of labor out of my entire shop every day, an additional 1.5 because we were more efficient at what we did, that would be an additional $70,495 in work with those 3 technicians. It's just 1.5 hours, half an hour out of each guy. And likely half of that would fall to the bottom line, about $35,000. It would increase my technician's efficiency, which would actually improve my labor margin, putting more money in the bottom line than I'm showing here. But I'm just proving what I can prove. Okay. So what if we put all the things together, Jimmy? What if we said, I'm going to do each thing that Cecil is talking about? So we raised our labor rate $10, that's 43,000. We increased our parts margin by 5%, that's 17,000. We increased our average repair by $50. That's not the 150, buddy. We're going for the small pieces. That's $62,000 in additional work that we would do. And by the way, this doesn't all pass through completely because on this, I'm paying for parts and labor. On this, I'm not. If we improved our effective labor rate by $20 on 17 hours a day, 3 guys at 72%, that's additional 85,000. And if we improved our workflow and added 1.5 hours a day for the whole shop, that's another 70,000. That's a total of 278. Whoa, go back, Cecil. Don't know why. That's a total of 278,900, almost $279,000. Now, what if I only got half of that, right? If half fell to the bottom line, what if I only got half of that half?
Quarter of it.
So what if I made $70,000 in additional profit because I did these 5 things? Now, I guarantee you'll make more than 70,000. But what if that's all I made? 70,000 because I did these.
You know what? I think it's still a good day.
I think it's a great day, buddy. It would be a great year to put another 70,000 in my bottom line. All right. So anyway, that's it. Are there any questions, Jimmy, that you
questions, comments, concerns? Ask? Yeah, if you've got questions, go ahead and type those into the questions chat, and we'll ask those questions here as we've got Cecil. And Cecil, this is absolutely amazing. I love these 5 steps. I love how we can help a shop find the balance, implement these 5 steps. And even if they only got 25% of it at 70,000 additional profit, is it worth it?
Yeah. I mean, was it worth the hour that you spent with us and the little bit of work that you have to do to get it done? And Jimmy, by the way, we have a really nice, about a 12-page workbook with this that spells it all out. And if you want to get that, I guess they're going to contact you, Jimmy, at wearetheinstitute.com.
Yes, send me an email requesting the workbook for the 5 profits. Okay. The 5 steps for profit.
5 steps for profit. Okay.
Yep. And we'd be happy to get
there, Jimmy.
Not that I'm seeing here so far, but I do want to remind everybody that is watching this that if this is interesting to you, this is what we do at the Institute. We help shops to identify these areas. We've got a business analysis that we can go through to help you find balance in your shop, balance in your life.
At absolutely no charge.
This is like a $6,000 value to you. It's at a no charge business analysis.
Happy to do that for anyone that is interested. And we're not like the hard selling, so we're not going to keep calling you every day and bugging you. You know, we'll tell you what we have. We'll explain it to you. We'll help you understand what it can do for you. And then it's up to you to make that decision.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so question coming in from Jason. He says, and Jason, I'm going to put a little bit of my own words into this. My shop's in a low-income part of town. It's a rough neighborhood. Does this process work even for my shop, which is in a low-income area, a rough part of town?
I would tell you the answer is yes, and I'll tell you why. Because in a low income area, you would think, okay, I'd rather be in a high income area. In truth, there's some benefit to that. I can probably have a higher labor rate, et cetera, in a high income area. The problem in a high income area is that person that makes a lot of money can go buy another car and it doesn't affect them. In other words, it's not the end of the world if they have to go out and buy a $50,000 car. In a low income area, the person coming in needs that work and they need to keep that car going because they don't have the option of going and buying another car. And they can buy a used car, but what are you going to buy for 10 grand or 15 grand? You're going to buy a car that needs $3,000 worth of work. And so I've run shops in both high income and low income. I had a shop in Palm Springs, one in Indio and one in Yucca. Both Indio and Yucca were low income. Palm Springs was high income. Actually had better success in Indio and Yucca. Not like I didn't have success in Palm Springs too, just two different, kind of different models. Yes, all of this works wherever you are. It doesn't matter. Your low income person, it's even more important to them to take care of their vehicle because they can't handle big financial surprises, right? They can't just go out and buy another car. So the answer is yes. Every single one of those things. And by the way, if you're doing better inspections and you're actually offering more stuff, some people are not going to buy. Some will. It's that whole, in sales, some will, some won't. So what? Who's next, right? If I'm able to offer another hour per car and only every third customer buys it, well, heck, I just raised my sales today by 3 hours. It's the little bits that add up to the big bits.
Yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
I love what you're saying there about the low income areas and somebody else going out and buying a car. My father always used to refer it as you're buying somebody else's headaches. Why is the car for sale? Because
used cars not a good decision for anybody, frankly. Very rarely is it a good decision.
Yep.
You're better off to fix the one that you know about in almost every case.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's a great argument to be made as well. Great question, Jason. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So this works for general repair. This works for European. What about the diesel shops?
Doesn't matter. It works for everybody. It doesn't. You could have a tire store. You could be working on big trucks. We have clients that are big truck clients. I got a guy that's on doing aluminum tanks. That's their primary business on big trucks, and we've increased their margins by like 18 points at the bottom line. So, when you're doing almost 2 million in sales, you get 18 points, that's $360,000 that you didn't have. So yeah, it doesn't matter which model you're running. This works in every model.
And to the guy, and maybe this guy from Salt Lake was a single technician. He was the wrench, the phone, the computer. Does it work for a single guy, single shop, single bay?
Think about him doing 6 hours a day if he's by himself. Because he's got to answer phones and do other stuff. What is $10 times 6 a day? That's $60.
$60.
What is 60 times 250?
A lot.
Let's just do the math. Can't do it in my head today.
6
so
quarters.
That's $15,000 in additional profit in the year for that guy. That's a $10 increase. Yes, it works for everybody. It doesn't matter if you have 5 techs, doesn't matter if you have 23 shops. We have clients I think our largest client has 32 or 38 shops now. We have a lot of clients that have multiple shops. We have a lot of clients that have single shops. We have clients that are just starting out. I started coaching 2 new guys this month who basically are just now opening their shops. They're smart enough to know if I get coaching, I'm going to get ahead faster. So it works with everybody. There's nobody it doesn't work with.
Yeah. Props to those guys that are starting their shops with coaching and training. You think of all the professional athletes, they've got coaches.
Yeah.
You're a professional shop. You need a coach.
All right. And so, Jimmy, as much as I am enjoying this, I'm going to have to go because I have other things I've got to do.
Cool.
So are we about ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, let's get on it. So for those of you who are watching this, there is free information. The Institute has created an entire library full of valuable information that will help you to get started. Go to gearsforshop.com.
It's actually gear, not gears.
Gear
Gear for
singular,
shops.
gearforshops.com. and sign up, get that free information. Once you've got that free information, you've listened to it 2, 3, 4 times, we're ready to take those next steps. Contact us. Go to wearetheinstitute.com. Let us connect, set up a 45-minute meeting where we can sit down and go through the business analysis to help you as a shop owner know exactly what phases of life you are in so that you can have a better business, a better life, results, better industry. My name is Jimmy Lea.
Cecil
We are the
Bullard.
Institute.
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Cecil. See you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon.